Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. Faced by last-minute court judgments, a notice of appeal, and an impending stay of execution of rulings from the appellate court, the electoral body in Nigeria, INEC, on Thursday played safe, saying despite the judicial proceedings, the governorship elections in Bayelsa and Kogi states scheduled for tomorrow would hold as planned. However, it didn't say if the election would go on in Bayelsa State, with or without the All Progressives Congress, APC, where a federal high court sitting in Abuja on Tuesday disqualified the governorship running mate, Senator Bio Barakuma Degi Eremienio, on the grounds that he had supplied false information to the Electoral Commission, contrary to the Electoral Act 2010 as amended. And while that situation is ongoing with the APC's, the David Leon ticket, trying to get the stay of execution, we also have the other issue with Senator Heineken Lopobiri having the primaries that produced David Leon ruled as, you know, what was the word they used? Well, sort of struck out. So APC really has a twofold problem at this point in Bayelsa State.
Yeah, yes. As I said yesterday, I mean, the position of INEC, the Independent National Electoral Commission, will be one to insist on its commitment to follow the rule of law, even if INEC has said that, you know, the spate of litigations pre-election puts it in a very difficult situation. But I guess INEC has no control over that. Now, INEC was to meet yesterday, and it did meet, and I believe that consultations were made with in-house counsel and other counsel, you know, who may be on retainership. And they came out of that meeting saying, you know, that the election will go on as planned in Bayelsa State, which is quite ambiguous. But then after that declaration, they were then faced with two rulings. A judgment that was obtained ex parte from the appeal court, you know, and I said ex parte deliberately because there's a problem with that, you know, granting a stay of execution over the earlier judgment by Justice Ekwo that the deputy governor of the APC is not a fit and proper person to be fielded, you know, as a deputy governorship candidate on the basis of contradictions in his Form CF 0001. Now, so that's one. Then, of course, the judgment by Justice Jenny Yang, Justice Jenny Yang in Federal High Court, Yenagua, saying that, look, the primaries conducted by the APC were defective to the extent, that it did not follow the rules of the party, and that every political party, you know, has a duty to follow his own rules. The person who purportedly declared the result of the primaries was said not to be the fit and proper person, that the result of the primaries should have been declared by a member of the National Executive Committee of the APC. And yesterday when we had Asubex here, he had pointed this out, that there was that case, and everyone was looking forward also to what comes out of that case. So on the basis of that, on one hand, APC was able to get a stay of execution, even if ex parte, and on the other hand, you had a high court sitting in Yenagua saying that no, you know, the primaries were not in order. However, the learned justice didn't go as far as declaring Heineken Lopobiri as the candidate who won the primary. So APC is faced with, you know, a repeat of history. You know, what they went through in Rivers State, what the party also went through in Zamfara State. And you could have a situation whereby whichever way the election goes, even if APC wins, they will still have this election in Bayelsa State will still be contested in court. That's definite. But the PDP also should not jubilate, because there's also another matter filed by Timi Alaibe, who is also challenging the PDP primaries. So on both sides, you know, we have a very difficult situation in Bayelsa State. And the best that INEC can do is to be seen to be neutral, to be studying the situation, and not to be seen to be dictating the pace of the conflict, either within the APC or within the PDP. But what you can take away from it is that the political parties, the two dominant political parties, who seem not to have learned enough lessons in terms of internal democracy, in terms of how they abide by their own rules, and in terms of how they focus on basic principles of the electoral process.
But can I just ask you, sorry, Leila, why is it an issue, the ex parte appeal, the ex parte motion that, produced the stay of execution?
No, I raised it as an issue. You know that the president of the Court of Appeal, as far back as, was it January, had warned judges against, entertaining ex parte motions and taking decisions on ex parte basis. Ex parte means without the other side.
Yes, but then when is the time
issues, but issues could be raised earlier about fair hearing, because we all knew
but
that.
They don't have time.
Well, I mean,
that 2 days.
Yeah, but the other party can, maybe later, whichever way the election goes, challenge it and say that, look, this was a judgment that was hurriedly given. Of course, in law, you can bring up any issue.
But it wouldn't be, I don't like ex parte applications either because it deprives the other side of their opportunity. But I think when it's such a time crunch on you, in certain cases, it's acceptable, I feel.
Well, sometimes you can question the discretion of court in such matters. And that's why I say, even after the election,
on Saturday?
Yes, whichever way it goes, it can still be challenged after the election.
No, it certainly will be challenged, but that it was given, well.
But I like that takeaway that you gave, Doctor, of the one takeaway we can have here is that neither of the two main parties have learned anything about internal party democracy. And it's such a shame because APC have really, really weakened their position ahead of these elections coming up in literally 1.5 days' time. And it's quite sad to see because, that is the takeaway. Neither of the two parties have learned anything about internal party democracy. But what's also surprising is INEC thinking that they can kind of also dictate certain things because INEC are not above the rule of law. And as much as it may be frustrating to have had that change so soon to the elections, you do also have to follow the rule of law and serve as an institution that governs that and shows the people that you follow the rule of law.
For me, I don't think lessons will ever be learned for as long as the way we play politics is this zero-sum game. There's so much at stake here. There's such power, such wealth to be had. It's there for the taking. People will do everything that they have to do. Internal democracy be darned, quite frankly.
Yeah, that is to be honest with you.
Yes, until the temperature is lowered, until people actually go in to serve, not to enrich themselves, and other things like that, then there will be no changes, I don't feel.
Yeah.
Now, still in Nigeria, a Federal Capital Territory FCT High Court sitting in Buhari has dismissed the suit filed by photographer Busola Dakolo against the senior pastor of the Commonwealth of Zion Assembly, Pastor Biodun Fatoyinbo. Justice Othman Musa, in his ruling on Thursday, held that the matter amounts to injustice and an abuse of judicial process, adding that the case is empty and purely sentimental. Justice Musa said the case was aimed more at cruelty than obtaining justice. The court also awarded costs of 1 million naira against Busola Dakolo and held that the fine should have been 10 times more because the court's time was wasted. Busola, who is also the wife of musician Timi Dakolo, in her suit filed in September, accused Fatoyinbo of rape. She had demanded, in quotes, a personal letter of apology from the cleric to show honest remorse for his misdeeds. Now, we all know that our courts are severely overburdened and judges don't like to have their time wasted. In the judge's ruling, he made that quite clear, which I think is in order as a deterrent for people from filing frivolous suits. That's fine. However, I think he went a little bit too far in some kind of personal pontification, talking about how she wanted to, the motivation was more of cruelty than obtaining justice. I don't think that was a necessary comment to have made there. But regarding frivolity or otherwise, he's very well within his rights to make that point. And feeling that praying the court for a letter of apology is frivolous, that's fine, that's all very well and good. But to sort of ascribe motives to this woman who has alleged a serious crime, I feel was insensitive of him and it was excessive. Now, this is the civil suit that has been put to rest at this point. She was, costs were awarded in the favor of Biodun Fatoyinbo. It's not a fine that was imposed on Busola Dakolo necessarily, but it's just perceived. Usually, two parties will they'll bear their own legal costs. But if it's felt that somebody has wasted the court's time or brought a frivolous case, then you have to pay the other person's legal fees, because that person should not be out of pocket for what is now being deemed as frivolous. So that's generally why costs are awarded in this manner. But we wait to see what the police investigation unfolds. The police are still investigating this. And it goes to just buttress the constantly repeated fact of the difficulty with rape cases. It's very difficult to actually prove and successfully prosecute, even if it just happened yesterday, much less 20 years ago. So,
well, I mean, it's very difficult for us to comment in extenso on the ruling, having not seen, the full text of the judgment. Because when a judge, arrives at certain conclusions, he or she will have to rely on the issues, the rules applicable, how those rules are applied in relation to the evidence before the court, and then the judge's own conclusions, both in relation to law and in relation to personal opinion, which is the obiter that you object to. Now, but in this particular case, we can make certain preliminary or peripheral comments. And the first will be that on the basis of technicalities, I had said on this program before that I did not expect, that she will get the justice that she seeks, both on the basis of the nature of the law on rape in Nigeria. But let's take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll summarize this. We'll take a short commercial break now. When we return, the conversation will continue. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News channel. We're still reviewing the headlines in today's newspapers. And Leila and Tuno, before we went on break, we were commenting on the ruling on the Busola Dakolo case. And I said that since we don't have the full text of the judgment before us, we can only make preliminary comments. And before we went on break, I had said that, look, what the case demonstrates is the difficulty in proving rape before a court of law. And many concerned stakeholders have argued over the years that there is need to review the law on rape in Nigeria. It's too restrictive. It puts too much burden on the accuser. It even ridicules the person, the petitioner, And of course, if you look at what happens in other jurisdictions, say the United States, take the case of Bill Cosby, America's favorite daddy, or take the case of R. Kelly, who this week was sentenced to 20 years imprisonment. You see that in that jurisdiction, a more liberal, a more open, attitude is taken, when rape is concerned. But here in Nigeria, we need to take a second look at it so that justice can be done. In this particular case, Busola Dakolo has announced, I think she issued a statement, saying that she will go on appeal, and that will be interesting. But what we can take away from the whole matter is that in the court of public opinion, which is not about law, which is about morality, which is about society, I think many Nigerians in their minds have convicted Pastor Biodun Fatoyinbo. They believe that there's some wrongdoing involved, but that's not how the law court operates. And that's a lesson perhaps for petitioners, for litigants in the future to realize that there are basic rules. But what is important in this particular case, whatever happens subsequently, is that it has helped to grow a conversation around rape and to raise awareness, and also in a way to empower young ladies, to act expeditiously, whenever they find themselves in similar circumstances. And I think that the conversation is useful for developing the jurisdiction on rape matters, and also, for empowering young ladies or young men or any persons who might find themselves in situations of harassment.
Absolutely. I think it will always still boil down to the fact that we do need to review rape laws in this country overall. It's horrific, it's sad, it's tormenting to see what so many women have to go through, and men, when it comes to being a survivor of rape in this country. But the case was already a case that Busola Dakolo knew she had very, very slim of a chance with, because this happened 20 years ago. And she was so strong to have come forward with her claims, because what happened? Several other women also came out accusing the same Pastor Biodun Fatoyinbo of having raped or sexually harassed them as well. And it started a conversation. I'm happy she's appealing. There is still a police investigation going on. And really and truly, let's just see what happens and where this goes. I was quite sad when I heard this yesterday, but let's see what happens. I'm happy that she's taken this on her head again and she said that she's going to appeal.
So we look out for updates on this story. Now, Chairman Senate Committee on Police Affairs, Senator Haliru Jika, has said the long-awaited Police Trust Fund will take off by January next year. Stakeholders have also called for the inauguration of the board and the setting up of the structure of the fund. They had called on the president to effect the appointments of board members and members of the implementation committee in order to fill the gaps in the funding requirements of the police force. This is coming as the Federal Minister of Health, Dr. Osage Ehinare, recommended a 6-monthly mental checkup for officers and men of the Nigerian police. This is good news. I mean, the Police Trust Fund Act was passed since March, and we're only getting momentum, according to this report, in January. That's taken quite a while, but at least it's better than nothing. Finally, we see. And everybody is quite excited about the Police Trust Fund. Nigerian companies, well, all companies operating in Nigeria, let me put it that way, because even foreign companies, as long as you operate in Nigeria, you must pay 0.005% of your net profits to this fund. They're going to get money from the consolidated account to this fund and other aids, other grants. So we're looking forward to a better funded police to be able to purchase equipment, training, build more police stations, renovate their barracks, and actually take care of the personnel. And I'm actually really glad to hear the Minister for Health talk about mental health of the police force, biannual checks of mental health. That for me is huge, because in Nigeria for such a long time, mental health was never even considered of anybody, really, especially not of the police. You're just expected to go out and do your job. Physical health, maybe. Mental health, never. It's never even raised in a conversation. So this, for me, is exciting news.
Well, I mean, the basic thing to say is that, look, funding is not enough, and it will never be enough. Every Inspector General of Police goes before the National Assembly to say we need more funds for this and that. But it's also important to place, emphasis on equipment, to place emphasis on training, and to place emphasis on welfare, and to place emphasis, as was pointed out in the introduction, on the mental health of Nigerian policemen. The average Nigerian believes that the average Nigerian policeman is sick mentally. And that's why there is so much concern about police brutality. You find all kinds of policemen who are trigger happy, who shoot people anyhow. We've had on this program many commentators on the subject who have pointed out that, look, the Nigerian government has to do something about the mental health of security agents generally. Not just the police, all the security agencies. I mean, only this week we had a major instance of a clear demonstration of the mental health of security agents who were throwing tear gas, who were using lethal and excessive force on persons who were carrying placards. So there's an issue there. But of course, I think the advocacy for President Buhari to set up the board of the trust fund has been there for quite a while. And I think that that's something that the appropriate persons should bring to his attention. The act itself spells out the composition of that board of the police trust fund. So it shouldn't be very difficult to just appoint persons, because some of the persons, most of them in fact, are occupying statutory positions. So it's just to inaugurate the board and to get that board working. But then the question is, the management of the fund. There must be transparency and accountability, and there must be commitment on the part of the persons who are to contribute these funds, to see it as an important social responsibility. In Lagos State, when we had the Lagos State Police Security Trust Fund, as it was called, I was a pioneer member of the board of that trust fund. We were able to succeed because we had the support of the private sector in Lagos, and even of private persons who volunteered and supported it. At the time, crime was a big issue in Lagos. And within a short period, with the support of everybody, we were able to, address the challenge in the state. I hope this, at the national level, will also work well. But you need political will on the part of the leadership elite, because if you don't have that political will, you can get the funds, but nothing will happen.
Absolutely, political will is
And I hope the board, when it is constituted, will not collect sitting allowances Because when we took on the same assignment, we didn't have any sitting allowance. We did the job free of charge. And in fact, when we had meetings, we didn't take refreshments. It was another agency of government that was giving us snacks because their own meeting usually coincided with ours. So whoever is involved must see this as a way to serve Nigeria.
Absolutely. I think it's an exciting development, like you rightfully said, Tundu. I think it's exciting to see, and it's also exciting to know that the mental health of our policemen and women is now becoming a focal point, which has always been important, but it hasn't been at the forefront. So it's a welcoming development. I'd like to see where this leads our police force too, and I think it's great support and it's what they need right now.
Absolutely. Now, Nigeria's former Minister of Information, Chief Alex Akinyele, is dead. A statement by one of his sons, Constantine Akinyele, confirmed that the Ondo chief passed away Thursday night after a brief illness. Akinyele has a trained public relations specialist and an administrator after serving as the Minister of Information. Later became chairman of the Nigerian Sports Commission. He was also a former president of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, NIPR. May his soul rest in peace, and we offer our condolences to his family.
Well, Alex Akinyele, was a very charismatic man, a man of style. He served Nigeria in different capacities, and he distinguished himself in every regard. He was born on April 24, 1938. He attended All Saints Primary School in Ondo, and also later went to Buligi Grammar School, and eventually attended St. Andrew's College, Oyo, where he got a teacher's training certificate. He would later go to the University of Ife, as it was then known, to study the English language. In 1967, he applied to join the police force, but this was around the Civil War. So eventually, he couldn't join the police force. He was directed to join customs. But he did so well under Duke, who was the head of Nigeria's Department of Customs and Excise, that Duke then made him the first public relations officer of the Department of Customs and Excise. And he remained in that position, did well, till 1978. He would later show up on the national stage when he was appointed Minister of Information by former President Ibrahim Babangida. And as Minister of Information, he was a very engaging personality, very humorous, witty, such that people used to talk about laugh with Aleko, you know. And then, of course, later he was moved from that position to become the chairman of the National Sports Commission. It was under him that Nigeria did very well at the Barcelona Olympics, and then the under-17 team of Nigeria also won the under-17 World Cup at Japan in 1993. He was also a way involved in the media. He was a director of Newswatch magazine, you know, and he was, you know, a favorite of the Nigerian media because of his wittiness. He was the first Secretary General of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations to later become president. And he was the man who helped to reorganize the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations. He helped to encourage the registration of members in that association. And I believe that today, you know, the Institute of Public Relations will miss him greatly because he remains one of the icons of that profession. And he's the first, you know, first public relations expert to become Minister of Information of Nigeria. There has been no other person from that group after him. Of course, he also had quite an eventful private life. After his wife died, he married someone else, but later that second marriage collapsed because he said he missed his late wife. But, you know, what is more important, of course, is his personality and his commitment to society. He was Lobosin of Ondo and the Jagumolu of Ipitu Ijesha. So he was also, in a way, well connected with his background, with his community. He will be greatly missed.
May his soul rest in peace.
Amen. What a life.
Yeah, so we commiserate with the NIPR, with the people of Ondo State, and also his family.
Yes,
absolutely.
That's all on the news headline.